The Houston Texans have a big Thursday. The Reese's Senior Bowl had a big Wednesday, and this offensive coordinator search could be drawing to a close very, very soon. Let's talk about it here on the YouTube channel. Welcome into the channel. I'm Cody Stoots. Let's talk some Texans. Let's talk a little bit about the Senior Bowl here in a moment. I'll have a Senior Bowl 7-pack for you. 7 observations from the second day of practices out here in Mobile, Alabama. Before we get to that, though, talk a little bit about this Texans offensive coordinator search that seems to be getting towards the end of the search. And here's why I believe that they're pretty close to the end of this thing. They've got 2 interviews scheduled on Thursday. Senior offensive assistant Bill Lazor is going to interview for the vacant offensive coordinator position, and Lazor is not a real candidate. I say not a real candidate. He's going to get the opportunity to interview, but I wouldn't hire Bill Lazor, and if they hired Bill Lazor, we should lose all faith in the way that they're operating. But the Lazor interview is along the same lines as the Stroud Johnson interview, in that they need to bring Bill Lazor in, ask him what happened to the offense, why didn't you stop it, and how would you fix it? And within those 3 questions that you ask Bill Lazor, you can glean a lot of information, because it's very rare for employees to get to come in and speak freely on their bosses, on the work situation. And if you're Bill Lazor or Stroud Johnson, you have really nothing to lose by just speaking freely. Hey, this did not go well. That did not go well. Bobby did this. Other coaches did that. I did this player, that player, so on and so forth. You give the Texans a tremendous amount of information, and then you go through how you would fix it, how you would avoid some of those pitfalls. But again, Bill Lazor, not the reason we're feeling like this search is close. Well, he kind of is, because his resume, 3-time offensive coordinator before in the league, all with middling results, and the resume of the other candidates that the Texans have interviewed, they don't stack up to the other Thursday interview. Nick Caley's resume as the tight ends coach and pass game coordinator for Sean McVay, having interviewed 2 years ago for the job, Nick Caley looks like the guy that's going to be the offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans. I mean, you think about Thad Lewis, who's quarterback's coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now. It would be wildly risky to make him the offensive coordinator, even if you thought he had some sort of magical potential that has been untapped. He's only been coaching for a few seasons. That would be a wild move to put him there when he has the shortened resume compared to the other candidates. Even Jeff Nixon, who they interviewed, the Syracuse offensive coordinator, he's got a pretty decent resume compared to the other interviewees, but his failure at the NFL level as an interim offensive coordinator and just the unique success that he had at Syracuse, I don't know that's fully, totally, and wholly translatable to the NFL level. Stroud Johnson, we've talked about his candidacy. It's a shorter resume from a coaching standpoint. He was a part of some of the issues on the offense. That's tough to overcome. Obviously, that applies to Bill Lazor as well. And then you look at Nick Caley. And 2 years ago, almost to the day, it was February 1st, 2023, when Nick Caley got his interview to be the offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans the first time around. DeMeco Ryans was hiring an offensive coordinator. 2 years later, he gets to walk in. He gets to showcase everything he learned under Sean McVay. Then he gets to explain why $3 million or almost $3 million wasn't important to him last year, and he stuck around with the Rams when the Patriots wanted him to be an offensive coordinator. And then Nick Caley gets to do the important part of the conversation. This is how I would run the offense for the Houston Texans. This is what I saw that was broken. This is what I can fix with just doing what I do, and this is what needs to be fixed with your help, because I need different players or different types of players than what you have in the building. And once he has the interview, barring Chip Kelly coming out of right field, it feels like Nick Caley is going to have everything that he needs to end up being the offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans. Now, the Chip Kelly element of this has been interesting to follow, because he's only ever been loosely linked to the Texans officially on one report. And that report was kind of weird because it linked him to the Jacksonville Jaguars as well. And that's not a play calling position that Chip Kelly would leave Ohio State for. And the Texans position is something that in theory he could leave for. But outside of that one report, really Chip Kelly has just been a wish list guy. He's been a guy where it makes connections. Like obviously he knows D'Amico Ryans from their time together in the NFL. He's a college coordinator. Being a pro coordinator is better. Like it's pretty easy to connect the dots and see how they would fit. But Chip Kelly, I would say that he's going to be able to keep all his real estate in Columbus because he's never really been connected with the Texans. And yeah, interviewing Chip Kelly would be strange. You'd still need to hear him out and figure out what he would do with the team, with the offense, why he would make sense, why it would go better than some of his previous stops in the NFL. But you would also still compare him to the other candidates. And he has a lengthy resume. He has an impressive resume. It's better than Nick Caley's, but he's going to want to take the job. And something somewhere doesn't link up for the Texans and Chip Kelly. Either Chip Kelly doesn't want the job, Chip Kelly doesn't want to be in Houston, Chip Kelly doesn't want to leave college, Chip Kelly doesn't want to leave Ohio State, or the Texans don't want Chip Kelly. They don't want to pay Chip Kelly. It could be any number of things, but the connection of Chip Kelly and the Texans, it's not getting there. It's not getting there. So barring that showing up, barring that turning into a Friday interview or an interview over the weekend or something early next week, it looks like to me, Nick Caley, the Rams tight ends coach / pass game coordinator, is going to end up being the offensive coordinator of the Houston Texans. 2 years after he interviewed for the job the first time, he's going to get the crack at it the second time. Based on this candidate pool that they have actually decided to go out there and interview. Now, if there were other candidates and there was some decision making to make and there was like, hey, D'Amico, go home for the weekend and really kind of hash this out and think about it, maybe a second round of interviews is necessary. Like, if that was the case, then I'd be like, okay, well, we may be another week at this thing. But with the other candidates that they've talked to, Nick Caley on Thursday, it feels like they're very close to getting this thing done. And I do believe, unless something crazy happens, Nick Caley is going to end up being the next offensive coordinator of the Houston Texans. Let's get to your comments, questions, joys, and concerns, and then let's get to the Senior Bowl 7-pack and talk a little bit about that. Cleve says, and yes, will they get it right? Experienced OC versus potential. Another OJT trainee. On-job training. Trainee. Gotcha. Took me a second there. Look, there's going to be some growing pains with Nick Caley if he ends up as the offensive coordinator. Same would be said for Nixon, Lewis, Gerard Johnson. Like, same would be said for them, maybe a little bit less with Bill Lazor, but the top-end potential is not there with some of these other candidates that it is there with Caley. Pawn Shop, good to see you in here. Not John says Stoots for OC. Would not go well. Would be worse than Bobby. Would not go well. Joshua says Lazor's resume does not inspire confidence in an OC. Yeah, 3 different stops, none of them remarkable as an offensive coordinator. And again, as the adult in the room, as the old guy in the room, he was supposed to make sure all the stuff doesn't go sideways, doesn't go wrong with the Texans last year, and he didn't do that. So, Bill Lazor, he's getting the talk to the old employees before you bring in the new employees treatment, it feels like. Brandon says, are there other teams that are supposed to interview Nick Caley after tomorrow? So the only teams that I would think would be able to interview Caley and actually have a shot at him after tomorrow would be a second interview with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Jets seem to be, zeroing in on Aaron Glenn's colleague in Detroit, Tanner Ingstrands. And remember when Nick Caley was heavily linked to the Jets and he was kind of near the top of their list, and then all of a sudden that just went away, and actually he's not a candidate and they're going to go with a Detroit guy? It's pretty curious, don't you think? So it seems like really only sticking in LA for another year or talking to Tampa Bay would be the options. Obviously, the Saints could interview him for the head coach job if they wanted to, but I don't think that he's on their head coach radar, and I wouldn't make him a head coach right now if I was an NFL franchise, even if I was as desperate as the Saints are. They seem to be zeroing in on Kellen Moore. So it feels like it's Texans, Buccaneers, or Rams for Nick Caley. Brandon says, never hurt to interview more people and pick people's brains, make connections. Well, that's another thing too, Brandon. You get Thad Lewis on the radar. Thad Lewis turns into a really nice coach, say 2 years later, Nick Caley leaves to be a head coach. Boom, you've already kind of got a little base layer on him. Same with Gerard Johnson. Same with Jeff Nixon. You get a nice little base layer, and especially Nixon. Like if Syracuse is good next year on offense and Caley gets a head coaching job after one season, kind of like what's happened with the Buccaneers and their offensive coordinators, boom, you got Jeff Nixon as a nice base layer. You go talk to him, see if you want to get him, Is it common practice for the OC to bring in their own O-line coach? I would think most offensive coordinators have a heavy say in who the coaching staff is on offense. Brandon says McVay was a tight ends coach before becoming OC, then a head coach. Everyone's got to start somewhere. Certainly. Cleve is very much against a first-time play caller. If he hasn't called plays, designed a scheme, written a playbook, developed an offense, then no. Well, I got news for you. The Bill Lazor's done all that, and I wouldn't let Bill Lazor sit my dog. So just because experience doesn't make you good. Experience doesn't make you good. There are people that have done jobs for many, many years, and they are blown past daily by people who are just more talented at those jobs than them. Experience does not guarantee you are good. Jerry Lucan says it will be announced Friday. Nick C is the new OC. Yeah, Nick Caley, not Nick Caserio. And we got two Nick C's now with Nick Caley, and if it is indeed him, and then Nick Caserio. Jose M says, "Good God Almighty, that's Josh McDaniels from the top rope." Now, Josh McDaniels in New England. Now, Josh McCown, he wants to sneak in there and cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase and end up as the offensive coordinator. I suppose it's not out of the question. Lovers J, we'll get to the wide receivers here in the Senior Bowl 7 pack in just a moment. Rolo Hendricks, honest question, do you think it's a risk going with Caley? There's no risk-proof offensive coordinator out there. So every offensive coordinator has risk. Is he among the riskier options that they have? Sure. Young guy, hasn't called offense before. That's a risky path to go down when that's the path you just went down with Bobby Slowick. This guy's got a little bit more seasoning than Bobby Slowick, but Chip Kelly would be risky. Having a tough time connecting with the team, and maybe the NFL is a little bit more ready for what he brings to the table offensively. Like what you're trying to accomplish with Caley is creating a supernova offense that isn't as reliant on the talent. The Texans became super reliant on who was playing. You watch the Rams, and they're reliant on Sean McVay creating and calling a really good play. They're not as reliant on exactly who the guys are. Now, obviously, when they have Kupp and Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams and the O-line's better and Stafford's playing well, like the offense looks better. But the creation of the offense creates a nice floor for the offense as well. Cleve wants Chip Kelly, who seems to be not interested. John Gruden, who's not going to be an offensive coordinator, or still Cliff Kingsbury. Well, you can't do that. Yeah, I'm just putting the context clues together, Sean. It just feels to me like based off of who they've interviewed and the resumes of all those people, it looks to me like it's going to be Nick Caley. And that's been my guy from the beginning. That's who I've wanted them to go after, connecting the dots of the interview a couple of years ago, the relationship with Nick Caserio from New England, the John Carroll background, and then obviously being with McVay. CJ Stroud watches the Rams offense in his free time. He's mentioned it just in like multiple times, talking about how when he just goes and watches their offenses, he watches the Rams, he watches the Vikings, which is an offshoot of the Rams offense. I think CJ's really going to like this offense. Would Caley be a first-time play caller? Yes. Okay, so you really want a no OC experience coordinator. So you're saying you place more value on potential versus experience. Sorry, but I hire experienced individuals, a 25-year PE engineer, BFR, and EIT. Yeah, okay. Like, but if you had somebody who was the top of their class from the number one engineering school in the country, and you thought one day they'd run the company, you'd hire them versus, the guy that's 25 years and wants to retire in a few years. Jake Asman with the super chat. Chug that water bottle, you animal, chug it. Quite the fetish you have, Mr. Asman. All done. Thank you for the super chat, buddy. Of course, Jake Asman and I used to host multiple radio shows together, including the widely critically acclaimed Wheelhouse program. Why not Doug Peterson? He wasn't very good in Jacksonville, and he turned over play calling duties. Is it possible Chip Kelly's reached out to privately and turned them down? Yeah. It's possible they weren't even interested, too. Stafford's one of his favorite quarterbacks. CJ has mentioned that before. Seems like everyone's looking for the next Ben Johnson. Experience doesn't guarantee being good, but it can't hurt. Correct. Who's the experienced guy that you want them to get, though? Like, who is super experienced that you're like, hey, got to have this guy? Like, if Chip Kelly doesn't want to come, then you can't get him. Oh, you want Doug Peterson? He stunk in Jacksonville. Mike McCarthy's not taking an offensive coordinator job. Like, again, experience doesn't guarantee that you're going to be good. Like, experience just knows, especially with guys that have been fired, experience just knows you know how to do it the wrong way a couple times. It doesn't guarantee you know how to do it the right way. What do you think about Brian Daboll? He would have been my top choice, but he didn't get fired. The Jets are a steaming pile, and they didn't fire him. So, I mean, I'd have been pounding the table for Daboll if he was available, but he's not available. He's head coach still. So, that's where we are. That's where we are on the coordinator situation. Let's talk a little bit about the Senior Bowl, because I do want to get out of here in time for Landry Locker to get going here at 10:30. Senior Bowl, if you're unfamiliar, all-star game that brings in, seniors from across the nation, played at a bunch of different colleges, and they practice for 3 days. They play an all-star game this Saturday, which you can watch on the NFL Network Saturday afternoon. But they're in Mobile, Alabama. That's where I am here at a hotel in Mobile, Alabama. And practice day number 2 was today. The full long recap is on Houston football. It's in the link in the description down below. $7 a month for Houston football. You get everything, including the Senior Bowl stuff. So you don't want to miss out on that. The offensive line bounced back in a big way today. Yesterday, I thought the offensive line got worked pretty good by the defensive line, but I thought the offensive line held their own today. Now, there's still some big moments from defensive linemen. Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M, who has had 2 good days and is now leaving the Senior Bowl. He had some moments, and then a couple of the Ole Miss guys had some moments. My guy, Darius Alexander, still had some moments. So there's still some moments, but the O-line bounced back. And one guy I want to talk about in particular, Gray Zabel from North Dakota State. He's a tackle at North Dakota State, but he's going to play guard or center in the NFL. And talking to him, one, incredible mustache just like me. Not as full, not as well grown in. He is a younger man than me, so he's still got some years to put on with the lip caterpillar, but incredible mustache. He's a big kid. I think about sometimes with like the smaller schools, Division II or Division I AA, whatever, I always think about those kids like, they're not as physically gifted. This guy's strong. He showed it on the field. He's built like a brick wall. I was standing next to him. He's a big guy. And it would be a departure from the way the Texans have previously drafted to get a guy like Gray Zabel. But, man, he looks for contact when nobody's around him to block. When was the last time the Texans offensive line did anything like that? He's had a lot of success against a variety of different guys, and he can play all three positions on the interior, including center, which he played in high school. So I'm not worried about waiting for him to figure out how to play center at the next level, because he said it's just like riding a bike. So the O-line bounce back and Gray Zabel are the first two pieces of my Senior Bowl 7-pack, if you will. So Zabel, put him on my crush list. I mean, the dude's a fun watch. You've seen some of the highlights making the rounds on social media, and talking to him, said he expects to talk to the Texans. He thinks he's already talked to him. If not, he thinks he's going to talk to him. And again, the Texans don't draft a lot of non-group of four guys. This would be worth breaking tradition, is Gray Zabel. Probably not in the first round, but man, he'd be a real fun second round pick. The tight ends had a great day. Yesterday, they stunk. Yesterday, there was one guy that was good yesterday, and it was Elijah Arroyo from Miami. Today, I felt like every tight end made a play. I felt like every guy made a play. Terrence Ferguson had some nice moments. By the way, gave a shout-out to Jeremy Shockey as a guy that he patterns his game after, which I thought was great. Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green at tight end. He runs like a wide receiver. I don't know if he can block, but he runs like a wide receiver. He's a great watch. Moliki Matavo from UCLA. Yesterday, I thought he was slow and should have played tackle, was the joke that I made. He looked much quicker today, much more in tune, in rhythm, in sync. Gavin Bartholomew from Pittsburgh. He looked like he was lost yesterday. Wasn't getting anything done. Much better today. CJ Dippre, I believe is how you say his name, from Alabama. He looked like a klutz, a blocker yesterday. Nope, he was out there. He shook the living hell out of Billy Bowman from Oklahoma. And Bowman had an interception yesterday and was great yesterday. Bowman did not have a good day today. But he shook the hell out of Billy Bowman to get open. Fedone from Nebraska, even though his pads looked too big, he was awesome today, catching, blocking. Mason Taylor, he got worked a little bit in one of the pass blocking drills, but then Mason Taylor really got going in the receiving stuff. And man, he's smooth, man. He moves like his dad used to pass rush, which, of course he did. And then Jackson Hawes is Mr. Blocker guy, Yale and then Georgia Tech. He only had 16 receptions last year. Dude had a crisp one-hand catch, just like on the sideline, reaches out, big mitts, just rips it down out of the air. Tight ends, huge day. This is a loaded – I didn't even mention the top guy, the guy who had the best day, Jake Brenningstool from Clemson. He had the best day amongst the tight ends. So really good day from the tight ends. That was Senior Bowl observation number 3. After they kind of plodded around yesterday, much, much better. Much, much better today. All right. I like these running backs a lot. A lot of good running backs here at the Senior Bowl. A lot of fun running backs. RJ Harvey, UCF. He's a little bit smaller than some of the other guys, but my goodness, is he fast. He did drop a touchdown today. I mean, he had a perfect little pass over the shoulder. Couldn't haul it in. Brashard Smith from SMU. Boy, I really like Brashard Smith. Trevor Etienne, he catches the ball like a wide receiver. He's awesome. And Devin Neal, spoke to him today. Remember I told you yesterday, I kind of thought the Texans might have had their eyes on Devin Neal. Well, Devin Neal did talk to the Texans, said he had a great interview and loves watching Joe Mixon tape and would love to play with Joe Mixon. So I found that to be fascinating. Damian Martinez had a nice moment today, but the two guys that jumped off the page for me today is Joquavius Woody Marks from USC. Woody Marks, called Woody because he loved the movie Toy Story as a kid. Woody Marks is so effortless catching the football out of the backfield at the running back position. I love watching Woody Marks catch the ball out of the backfield. It's a great performance catching the ball from him. And the other guy that I'm shocked the Texans haven't talked to him yet, he just screams Texans, Jarquez Hunter from Auburn. This dude was a wall in the pass blocking drills, catches the ball excellent out of the backfield. Maybe he's not as fast as a running back as you'd want, but he pass blocked really well, caught the ball really well. And if he can just get the running, if they can just find the right situations for him to run in, and maybe this is the right system for him, whatever the new offense coordinator runs, I just feel like Jarquez Hunter is a player, man, from Auburn. He looked really good. So I'm falling in love with some of these running backs here. Fallen in love. And Jalen Johnson loves him some Devin Neal. Nosh says, Jarquez Hunter, get ready to learn Texan. Yeah, from your lips to God's ears, man. There's some D-depth here. There's some really good defenders. There's some really impressive defenders here. Some really fun defenders here that probably aren't anywhere close to day one guys, but if you ended up as a day two guy, could be some really fun stuff. I can't stop thinking about D'Amico Ryans getting his hands on Darius Alexander, the interior defensive lineman from Toledo, and just turning him into a wrecking ball there in the middle of the Texans defense, with the edges being fantastic. The Texans talked to Darius Alexander, and man, he's good. There was a couple of safeties that had some nice moments, a couple of cornerbacks that had some nice moments. Who was the cornerback from Quincy Riley from Louisville? He's talked to the Texans. John Crumpler from Texans Wire talked to him. He's talked to the Texans. That'd be a nice depth piece. They need a cornerback 3. And if you had a young guy that could grow into it behind Kamari Lassiter and Derek Stingley, that'd be great. Yaya Black from Iowa would be a really fun interior defensive lineman to have hanging around. Same with Junior Tafuna, interior defensive lineman. And then one of the safeties from the afternoon crew. Let me get his name right here. Okay. Dante Trader Jr., he blew up a running back on a play, like popped him, and you're not supposed to go to the ground. He popped him. It was like, sorry, but not really sorry. And then later on, he was flying around the field, man. I just love what he brought to the table from the safety spot. And, got to look at him. He's on the radar now. And my guy on defense at linebacker, Jack Kaiser. Kaiser had another nice day. Interception in the team portion. And really enjoyed my conversation with him. We'll bring you that at some point here on the channel. A little recap of it's on the website. I don't think I got the video, so maybe not on the channel. But quickly, wideouts have not wowed me yet. I mean, they have a play here or there. Texans have talked to some of these guys, and not all of them, like I kind of thought. But it feels like guys make like one play, and then that's kind of it. Isaac Tesla from Arkansas. He looks like a bad guy from an 80s movie. Isaac Tesla from Arkansas. Check him out. Check out the highlights on that. He ran a go route today. Guy wasn't even close. Boop. Dropped it in the bucket there. The wide receivers just haven't jumped off the page yet for me. Jalen Knoll, Kyle Williams, fun players. Knoll hasn't talked to the Texans yet, which I thought was interesting. I felt like he would have fit what they do. Pat Bryant from Illinois has had some nice moments, but nobody's really taken over at the wide receiver position just yet. And finally, here for the Senior Bowl observations, the meetings, guys that they have talked to. So I talked to Devin Neal. They have talked to Neal. They've talked to Brenningstool and Hawes at tight end. Brenningstool, the Clemson tight end. Hawes, the Georgia Tech tight end. Crumpler had both of those. Darius Alexander was the one that I really wanted to talk to on the defensive line. They talked to him. And here's the cool thing about the meetings. Darius Alexander told this to me, and Hawes told this to Crumpler. Texans apparently have just like a ton of energy here in these meetings. They get like people jacked up when they roll in there. And Alexander said, he's like, I had so much fun with that meeting. It was great. So had guys jacked up, ready to go, talk football. They loved it. And my guy, Kaiser, is going to meet them as well before he leaves at the Senior Bowl. So there's your Senior Bowl 7-pack to wrap this up. And let's send you over to Landry Locker. He is live right here. I think at the end of the video, it just automatically should take you there. But for the most part, I'm going to put that in the chat as well. So head over to Landry's. We're going to wrap this thing up. I've taken up too much of his time. He's usually there at 10:30. Should have been done a little bit, but I wanted to give you guys the Senior Bowl stuff. One more day of practice. I have stuff that I didn't get to from this that we'll make sure we get to tomorrow, and I'll do a big Senior Bowl wrap-up Q&A, and I'll just go through the roster, and if I have anything about those guys, I'll just fire it away. So be on the lookout for that. We end the live streams the same way each and every time. This is my hope for you. This is my charge for you as well. I want you to eat good. I want you to sleep good. I want you to be good. We'll talk Texans again soon. Get over to Landry Locker's channel. It's in the chat. It'll show up here when this video's over. Get over to the locker room. I'll see you in the chat. Let him know Cody Stoots sent you. Thanks for watching, everybody.